Hello everybody, welcome back to Practice Like a Pro. So today we're going to talk about the chromatic scale and why it's important. Let's get straight into it. So the chromatic scale is basically the alphabet. If you think of the chromatic scale as like your ABCs in the English alphabet. Now it's very difficult. It's very difficult to be able to speak the language of music if you don't know the fundamentals of it, like where all the notes are. So what we do is we take the 12 notes of the chromatic scale and then we pick certain intervals, certain distances that create certain feelings, like your major scale or your minor scale. It's all various iterations and different selections from those 12 notes. So if we go back to my first slide, the chromatic scale is easiest explained from the first letter of the English alphabet as well as the musical alphabet. So a lot of the times we talk about the key of C. We're going to start from A today because it all sits on one string really well. So the first one, I'll do that again on my B cam for you. So that's just all the notes on one string until you reach the octave. The octave meaning you've gone from one A all the way around to another. Okay. Now the linear chromatic scale is better used in like modal playing and modal interchange. Now this is a great exercise that I use in my own warm-up. For example, instead of going across linear in one string, I'd be more inclined to go across like this over one octave. So you've got 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4 on the A string, followed by 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4 on the D string, followed by 0, 1, 2. And that's the octave. Now what I like to do is I like to practice with the metronome in singles, doubles, triplets and quads, whichever way that you want to do. But I'll sometimes start from E and I'll go through an octave of E, then an octave of F to F, F sharp to F sharp, G to G, G sharp to G sharp, and actually say the notes out loud. Now you don't physically have to do that, I just find it helps me. But a lot of people start to say in the beginning of learning to play the guitar, I'll put this slide back up so that you can be practicing that while I'm waffling. A lot of people say, I want to learn all the notes on the fretboard and how music theory intersects with the notes on the fretboard. Well, you've got to learn the letters of the language before you start piecing sentences together. So what I'd be tempted to do is I'd get your rules down for your music theory, such as there's no sharp or flat between B and C or E and F. And I'd get yourself to a point where you can count all the way up and down one string. And then I'd start mapping it out on the fretboard over. You've heard me talk about the finger per fret rule before. See if you can play the chromatic scale using the finger per fret rule. So after you've done that a few times, that's kind of almost like level 2 is that. I'll go to my B cam and show you that. And as always, you should be down and up picking and using more than one finger. You know, you might as well kill two birds with one stone and be able to turn it into a dexterity and a picking exercise as well as a theoretical exercise. But experiment with that. What does that sound like if you play every other note? Well, that's what we call the whole tone scale. It starts to sound like the Wizard of Oz, etc. But you could also try it over 2 octaves. Now, in my own practice, wrong slide. In my own practice, this is what I do. I'll play a scale over 2 octaves and try and finish on the same note that I started on. So for example, this exercise starts on A and finishes on A. So you've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the A, D. Now you'll notice on the G you only play 0, 1, 2, 3. Now notice that the third note is a B flat, and then after B flat becomes a B natural. Now if I go to this slide here, you can see I've highlighted the two B's in purple. Now obviously you don't want to play the same note twice, and because of the way that the guitar's tuned, we know that the B string, come back to this cam, when we tune the guitar by ear, you go up to fret 5 until you get down here, and then you go to fret 4. Now this example is accounting for that small movement. Now I won't go too into why we have to do that, but it's to make all your cowboy chords, your C, your G, your D, make all those shapes familiar. Some players like Tom Quayle, for example, will tune all the strings to fourths, but it's not conventionally the way that it's done. So a little bit of a tangent there, but that's why we don't go to the 4th fret. So if we come back to that one, I'll put a metronome on and I'll practice going from A to A. Now you'll notice that the second octave, that A up on the 5th fret of the high E string, we haven't got 5 fingers. So what I tend to do is, as I'm coming to the top of that, I'll just slide my pinky up. Let's go back to that for a second and just run around that a couple more times. So this, I think of this as like music theory 101, because you've got to learn where all the notes are on the fretboard. Now this would be what we call a first position. It's a classical guitar term that the first, if your first finger, and you're using the finger per fret roll, is hovering over the 1st fret, we'd call that first position. Just as if your first finger was hovering over the 5th fret, we'd call that 5th position. Now first position's a great place to start, because you can do music reading, you can do all your beginners sort of guitar music reading. There's a great book called The Guitarist Way that's intended for children, but I teach everybody how to read using that. I think this is a great way for you to start, because you've got all of the notes at your disposal, and then maybe start looking at some formulas of intervals to create major scales, minor scales, pentatonic scales, and see if you can superimpose them over the top of that. So I wasn't intending on using this slide for this lesson, but if you have a look at this scale shape quickly, you know, some of those scale shapes that you've got, see if you can work those over the top of it. Just an idea that I've had today. Let me know what you think about this new format. I kind of like this live stream kind of way of doing things. It's a lot quicker, and it means I actually get done, not paralysed by analysing it. Let me know what you think. I'd be really, really interested. And let me know how you've got on with the chromatic scale and if there's anything that you'd like me to cover. Until I see you next time, keep practicing like a pro. Cheers.